Welcome to the Premier League predictions, and there are 10 different games to predict, and I will predict them all. We start off at Portman Road. It's Ipswich Town versus Crystal Palace. And Crystal Palace in the last game, I thought they were really exciting. Honestly, against Newcastle United, unfortunate for me as a Newcastle fan, Crystal Palace was the better side and they deserved that equaliser at the end there. And they looked so good in my opinion. They were fast to counter-attack, they looked quite fun and they deserved more than one goal in that game. And now they're facing Ipswich, which lost it against Nottingham Forest. Now Nottingham Forest is definitely a hard game considering how well they've been doing, but they were hanging on for their dear life and they nearly got a point, but a penalty happened. And, well, Chris Wood's taken it, so you've got no chance. They didn't exactly play terrible against Nottingham Forest. Defensively, they hold it off really well. And before this game, they did really well against Man United to get a point. They did really well against Tottenham to get 3 points. So it feels like a very hard game to predict here. Both teams very similar in the table. Both teams trying to find a comeback to get out of the relegation zone. Crystal Palace now are. I would say Crystal Palace is definitely the better side because I feel like a lot of their performances, like the one against Newcastle, they probably deserve more points than they're actually getting. And Crystal Palace just looks so good, so I can't see them losing it. But then, yet again, Ipswich, they still didn't do terrible against Nottingham Forest. And they still did well against Man United. They still did well against Spuds. And I feel like they're starting to improve again, but so are Crystal Palace. If maybe Crystal Palace were at home, I probably would actually edge them. But because Ipswich are at home, and because this is probably a much more easier game against Crystal Palace, especially that Crystal Palace haven't been amazing this season, I definitely think they can get a point. So this just looks like a draw all over, and I'm going to have to go down the middle. I'm going for a 1-1 draw between Ipswich Town and Crystal Palace. And you might be wondering, why is the editing so bad all of a sudden? Well, it's as simple as there's midweek games, so I can't make the editing fantastic. Because these videos take me 20 hours to actually make. And there's only 24 hours within a day. And the games start tomorrow, so I'm going to have to reduce the editing. But next week, it will return with an absolute bang! But now we move to the King Power Stadium. It's Leicester City versus West Ham United. And really, you look at this, again, it's two teams that are very similar in the table. And two teams which got battered in the last game. Leicester got battered against Brentford. That was a shocking display. I mean, the goal was good between Vardy and Buonanotte, but it was a horrible display defensively. And Van Nistelrooy was watching Ben Dawson coach that game, and you might think they've got a manager bounce. They're at home, and they're facing a side which got battered in the last game, and they're also facing a side, I'm talking about West Ham here, who are also quite far down in the table, only a couple of places above them. So they're probably licking their lips thinking, this is definitely a winnable game. And I think it will be quite a close game considering both sides aren't doing amazing, but West Ham are doing better. They're above them in the table, in fact 4 or 5 points above them, and they are underachieving because they've got some quality players which in their primes, they would look fantastic. And the fact that Leicester in the last game did so shockingly, I can only see a West Ham win here. Maybe a draw because Van Nistelrooy could have a bit of a manager bounce, but to be honest, I don't think he's going to be able to do it within one flick of a switch. It's going to take a while with Leicester City, and with Kudus coming back into the side, it's going to give them that extra quality, that extra pace in the final third, especially against a terrible Leicester defence. I'm going to have to go West Ham. In my opinion, they're better on paper as well. So I'm going 2-1 to West Ham United as they face Leicester at the King Power. We move to the St Mary's. It's Southampton versus Chelsea. Chelsea, that was a crazy game. To batter Aston Villa like they did was amazing. They look absolutely superb. Chelsea, I'm pretty sure are in the top 4, either 4 or 3rd. So just go on to the basis on the table. Go on the basis that Southampton only drew the last game against Brighton. Although I say only draw, it is against Brighton, which are doing very well. And Southampton, against Liverpool, they did pretty well. If it wasn't for them pretty much losing the game because of their sheer mistakes, working their way from the back, giving it to Liverpool, gifting Liverpool chances, they probably could have got a point or even better, 3 points in that game. But Southampton, the last couple of games, I've been seeing some good signs, especially from Tyler Dibbling. he looks like an absolute gem for the future and for now. So I don't think it's going to be as of the walk in the park as I originally thought. I was going to go 3-4-0, but I'm going to go 3-1 to Chelsea because I feel like Southampton are going to be able to get a goal, especially at home, and especially how they've actually looked in the last couple of games. But yet again, I've just seen too many mistakes playing out from the back that has cost them games. So Chelsea, especially how well they're doing, are definitely going to win this. We move to the Etihad Stadium. It's Manchester City versus Nottingham Forest. Manchester City, coming into this game, they've lost the last 4 games in the Premier League and haven't won 1 in the last 7 games of all their competitions. Whilst Nottingham Forest has lost a couple, but has bounced back against Ipswich Town through a penalty. And you know what? That game could have probably been 0-0 in a different universe versus Ipswich Town. And against the Gunners and Newcastle United, I didn't think they looked very good at all. But still, I have to give credit to them. Their defence was rock solid, like we've seen them a lot of times this season. Nottingham Forest are currently in a better state than Manchester City. But you know what? Man City, every year, from the top of my memory, Man City always goes through rough patches. And Pep always seems to do the best to mitigate it. And overall, Man City always find a comeback. But this is worse than ever, I do have to admit. So really, if Nottingham Forest was ever to get a point or 3 points against Man City, this is probably the best time. But you have to remember, Man City are at home and they're at the Etihad. And quickly, I do want to point out that I hope Pep Guardiola is mentally okay at what he said at the end of his press conference. I hope he is okay, because at the moment at Man City, it's not looking good. But as I was saying, Nottingham Forest, yes, could definitely get a point here. 100%, 3 points. But Man City, they're at the Etihad Stadium. Have trust in Pep Guardiola, because the players are starting to return. And when I say that, I mean the likes of Jeremy Doku. He impacted the game a lot. I mean, if Phil Foden was actually doing really well, which he isn't at the moment, if Kevin De Bruyne was in his prime, which at the moment he's still suffering from fitness issues, then Jeremy Doku's amazing runs into the box would be really good. And especially if Haaland played like he did in all the previous games, getting into the right positions, Jeremy Doku would have made a really big impact. So start Jeremy Doku, have trust in Pep Guardiola, and the fact that Man City are at home, the fact that Nottingham Forest, to be honest, only scraped it against Ipswich, and they're quite low down on the table, and they still didn't do well against Newcastle and the Gunners, I think Man City can definitely get something. I know Man City looked like a championship quality side in the first 30 minutes, but still, they still got a quality side, and eventually they are going to return on form. It's inevitable. They just are. Their players will get fitter, like we've seen with Jeremy Doku finally returning. And at home, they're going to be really, really wanting this more than ever. And I actually see them winning it. I see them on the comeback. I mean, I've never actually gone for a Man City loss this season. So if they lose this, then I'm probably going to have them to lose the next game, whoever it is. I'm saying this now, I'm locking it in. But as I said, they're going to scrape this. It's not going to be pretty, as Nottingham Forest are a good side. But at home, I feel like Man City can do this. Also, if Nathan Ake can have the game he had against Liverpool, then that would be amazing, because Nathan Ake was by far Man City's best defender. And you're going to have to look at the positives, because I think there is still quite a bit. So yeah, I think Man City can definitely win this. I'm scraping it 2-1 to Manchester City. We move to St James's Park. It's Newcastle United versus Liverpool. And this is going to be a very interesting matchup, because from memory, purely on memory, Liverpool always win. Home or away, they win against Newcastle. Loads of times it's happened. And especially that Newcastle, we were good defensively. Good goalkeeping by Nick Pope. Good in the midfield to get it to a certain point on the pitch. We managed to get it up to a certain point. But then literally, I think this is the worst I've ever seen Newcastle in the final third. I mean, it doesn't help that Alexander Isak is now injured after he got a bit of a knock in the game and he came off at the 22nd minute. That definitely doesn't help us being terrible in the final third, because we didn't even have a shot on target. We didn't even score. I mean, it was a good set piece initially, but it was Mark Gay which scored for us. Maybe he did sign at Newcastle after all. But going against Liverpool, I mean, it's just a different kettle of fish than Crystal Palace. There's one thing. I am going to go for Liverpool because it's the obvious choice. And evidently, I am a Newcastle fan, but Usually, when I have said Newcastle to lose, we did not lose. So I'm hoping that if I say we lose against Liverpool, we actually get something out of it. That's my logic. So Liverpool, I'm saying 1-0, but my logic is there, and hopefully, Newcastle, we can win. We move to Goodison Park. It's Everton versus Wolverhampton Wanderers, and Everton conceding 4 goals against Man United, which struggled to score. It's not like them, and it mainly came from silly mistakes, some very similar mistakes, and if you don't release the ball fast enough in your own half versus Amid Diallo, you're in trouble. You really are in trouble. And honestly, those aren't the mistakes that we normally see Everton make, because overall, for many seasons, in my opinion at least, they've looked quite tight defensively. And for many seasons, in my opinion, they have scored barely any. In fact, historically, they have not scored many, at least from memory and vibes I get. And they're struggling to score again, so I only really see them scoring 1 because Wolves did make a couple of mistakes. I mean, they conceded a hat-trick of penalties, and I don't think that's really ever happened in the Premier League, conceding a hat-trick of penalties. And the 2 penalties was just silly mistakes. Honestly, they could have mitigated the problem and probably got a draw if they didn't pass the keeper while the Bournemouth players were ready to pounce. And those are some silly mistakes. That's why they initially lost that game. Just some silly errors that can easily be mitigated. And Everton made some silly errors that can also easily be mitigated. So I think both teams will probably mitigate those problems because they're both quality sides, which I think both of them will survive this year. They're quite similar position in the table. Overall, on paper, I think they're quite close. I can't split them, especially that Everton, if they don't lose, they draw. At least most of the time, they seem to draw. So I'm going to go for a draw. I cannot split the sides. I'm going for a 1-1, decently low-scoring result between Everton and Wolves. We move to the Emirates Stadium. It's the Gunners versus Manchester United. Man United, a great dominant performance. You finally got a dominant performance. I've only really seen you have a dominant performance against Leicester, against Southampton, and in the Cup against Barnsley when you won at 7-0. To have a dominant performance against a side which overall is defensively very, very good, that's really good, especially that you struggled to score against Ipswich, and you struggled to score really all season unless it's against your lower teams. And Amid Diallo, amazing, absolutely amazing. I mean, he was involved in 3 of the goals mainly, just winning back the ball high up the pitch. The pace from him, the desire was really good. He also got 2 assists as well. And Rashford's back, 2 great finishes, a great performance, and surprisingly Joshua Zirkzee got 2 goals. And it wasn't just that, some of his decision making to maybe look for a pocket of space and pass it into, or make the good runs, he did very well, and also the goals. And that's surprising because in my opinion, he's been, I don't want to say it, not amazing. Bad, I guess you could say. Because each time he comes on the pitch off the bench or starting, I just feel like each time he gets on the ball, he loses it, either from a bad touch or from a bad shot. And I didn't really rate him, but if he can do performances like that against great defenders, and if the attack can do really that well with Manchester United, then definitely they can get results away from home against Arsenal. But Arsenal, they battered Sporting 5-1. Can I quite say Sporting battered Man City 4-1? And if Arsenal battered them 5-1, that's crazy. Arsenal also battered Nottingham Forest, which are on good form 3-0. And they just won 5-2. And it was a good performance by Arsenal. They're looking much more dominant and they're scoring more goals than ever. So even though Man United and Arsenal are doing better, I feel like Arsenal have done it against better sides. While Man United are playing Leicester and Everton, which are quite low down on the table, Arsenal are doing it by even better sides. And especially at home, I'm going to have to edge Arsenal. And I think this is a big test for Man United, because they haven't lost for quite a while, really. So I am going to go for Arsenal. In my opinion, they've just got even more quality. But honestly, under Ruben Amorim, Man United, you're definitely making a comeback. So I'm going 3-1 to the Gunners as they face Ruben Amorim's Man United. And we move to Villa Park as Aston Villa versus Brentford. First, I'm going to say there will be a lot of goals in this, because both teams are conceding so many goals this season. And Villa, I don't know what's going on. They've been terrible, haven't they? I'm sorry, Villa, to be a bit harsh there, but you have. You lost it 3-0 against Chelsea, and it could have been 4 when Martinez made that silly error, passing to Nicholas Jackson like that, but he did recover very well. and there's still a quality side in there, and I think they can win this. I know Brentford are currently above them in the table. It's crazy to see Aston Villa in 12th and Brentford in 8th, but I think Villa overall are better than Brentford. And this is a good time for Villa to get some points, because Brentford away from home I don't think have been particularly amazing. Plus, I still see amateur signs in that Brentford side. I say it week in, week out, but I do see a lot of amateur signs. But still, they were by far the better side against Leicester, and they did really well. So I'm going to give Brentford 2 goals, but in Brentford fashion, they will concede a lot of goals as well. And in Aston Villa fashion, they will concede a lot of goals. Like I said, Brentford will get 2. Aston Villa will get 4, as I just feel like at home, facing a Brentford side which have made mistakes and are poor away from home, and an Aston Villa side which, in my opinion, still has quality, despite them losing, or maybe now and again drawing. Yeah, I cannot see another game where they do not get a win. Surely Aston Villa, that side under Unai Emery, can turn things around at Villa Park as well. I'm going for a 4-2 crazy scoreline, as Brentford games are always crazy. And obviously towards Aston Villa. We move to Craven Cottage. It's the Cottages versus Brighton and Hove Albion. You know what, this one's going to be a close matchup, because I thought the Cottages was really good versus Tottenham. They put in some great challenges. Obviously got a red card, but near the end. No Tom Kearney, which has got a bit of a miss, but I think they've got enough squad depth to patch up that red card by Tom Kearney. And I feel like the Wolves loss was down to the injury of Anderson, really. And I feel like you can just forget that game, because I thought you were pretty good against Tottenham. And I don't see you losing this, especially at Craven Cottage. And especially that Brighton only got a point against last place. Definitely makes me have some concerning issues. But overall, Brighton still look really good. At least in my opinion, I look at this game, I look at all the factors, and it looks like a draw. It honestly looks like a draw. I can't split the sides. Fulham looked really good against Tottenham. And if you forget the Wolves game, they look really good beforehand as well. But Brighton also look even better, you could say. But because Fulham at home, I don't think Brighton can win this. So I'm going for a bit of a Desmond 2-all draw, and it's going to be a great end-to-end game because both of these sides have great attacking threat. Now we move to the Vitality Stadium. It's AFC Bournemouth versus Tottenham Hotspur. And like I said last video, Tottenham are very random. And this draw, I mean, they haven't got many draws this season, have they? And overall, I think it probably deserved to be a draw in that game. And Tottenham, I still feel like, are a great side. I think they can get a win against Bournemouth, but Bournemouth could easily get a draw or even a win because they look amazing. Against Brentford, they could have easily got 3 points. Against Brighton, they probably should have got at least a point, and they could have easily got 3 points. So I am tempted to go for a point here, but I don't know. I've just got a really good feeling about Tottenham. Ange-Postecoglou football, you may not like it at times, but you may like it because I feel like their attacking style football is what is going to win them games in the future. When they get their defence a bit more tight, a bit less open, I feel like they can do a really good job. But in my opinion, this one, I was originally maybe going 2-all or something because Bournemouth look amazing. And I don't know what it is, but I think Tottenham are better on paper. And I think that's probably what is directing my brain to say a Tottenham win here. But they don't have Van der Ven, nor do they have Vicario in goal. Definitely going to allow Bournemouth to get a couple of goals. But I just feel like I'm just so impressed with the attack. I'm so impressed that they have battered Man City despite them going on a downfall. And I just feel like they're better on paper. I'm going Tottenham 3-2 in this game, but I would not be surprised for, well, any of the results, really. As we end off the predictions, I'm not done there yet. I'm going to give my goal of game week. I'm going to give it to a free kick taker, Emerson. Great free kick. One of the best free kicks this season, and that is my goal of the week. But how did I do? Well, we don't have the fancy graphic to tell you all my results, but I can at least see how many points I actually got. And well, I got 3 points. Okay, we can brush that aside, right? Overall, that puts me on 76 points out of 260. Football is random. How did I only get 3 points? I am terrible at predicting all of a sudden. I started off so well. Either way, if football is random, all my predictions are bad, or if it's just a bit of both, I'm going to bring you to my next video that hopefully you're going to watch. And especially if you want to know why I support Newcastle, let me show you that video. Toodle pip!